Today I'm going to be talking about the film structure of Fantastic Beasts and where to find them, hence why I'm sporting my house colors. Fantastic Beasts follows a 3-act film structure. This means that it proceeds linearly from beginning to end with little or no extra scenes in between. The plotline progresses quickly from the setup to the main conflict and then to the resolution. The plot follows 3 storylines, 1 main plot and 2 subplots that end up driving the main plot and sort of convolging and wow. During the setup of Fantastic Beasts, we are introduced to this black blob, which Newt explains towards the end of the setup is something called an obscurial. This obscurial black blob thing is terrorizing New York City, which is not cool. We are also briefly introduced to a relationship between the character Credence and the character Mr. Graves. This scene is framed to be very suspicious and slightly ominous. It uses high contrast lighting with large and sharp shadows and multiple close-up and extreme close-up shots. This emphasizes the tone of the scene being very sinister and ominous. It also helps to cue the audience that these characters that seemed like side characters throughout most of the setup will actually play a larger part in the story moving forward. The final subplot that is set up is a bunch of Newt's animals get loose and scatter around the city. We don't see the characters explicitly going to each location, but rather a shot of the location and some type of odd disruption, like a tail slithering into a window or a roar coming from a park. This, coupled with the fact that we know some beasts likely escaped from the scene before, helps tell the audience that these locations and whatever's in them are likely going to be coming up in the future of the plotline. With character introductions done, major plot devices introduced and briefly explained, our main plotline moves swiftly forward from the setups of Act 1 to the conflicts of Act 2. We start out Act 2 with Newt looking for his creatures with Jacob. This is a thread throughout the entire middle act and is a device used to progress the character arcs, especially with Tina, and characterization, especially with Newt. These sequences are also amazing examples of the wonderful visual and audio effects of this movie. In specific, the scene with the Akame. An Akame is a snake-like creature that can shrink or grow to fit a specific space. In the scene where the main characters are trying to catch the Akame, the creature slithers around the room in a frantic motion while characters are also running around the room frantically trying to catch it. This circular motion, coupled with the wind-like sound effects that are going on, creates a tornado-like visual and helps cue the audience a tone of urgency. Also in Act 2, we have our main conflict picking up. Our obscurial friend, the black blob, is getting angrier and attacking more and more non-magical folks. This brings our main characters to the magical government, where Newt is able to explain to them that the obscurial is indeed attacking New York City. The magical government doesn't like this very much, so they arrest Newt, Tina, and Jacob and bring them in for questioning, conducted by Mr. Graves, who, if you don't remember, is the spooky, ominous, creepy man from before. Yikes! This is where the 2 subplots of Mr. Graves and Credence and the obscurial converge. Dun dun dun! Graves questions Newt on how obscurials work and if they can be controlled by outside forces. Newt catches on to Graves's more sinister undertones when talking about the Obscurial. So he tells him that anyone who would want to use an Obscurial is likely dangerous. Upon hearing this, Greaves sentences them to death, which they escape from using magical animals, hooray, and goes to find Credence. We then have a scene where Credence and his sister are confirmed to be witches who are suppressing their powers. Credence tells Mr. Graves that the Obscurial was his sister, whereupon Graves leaves Credence, telling him that he is worthless and will never be able to have magic and be a wizard. It's pretty mean. Upon hearing this, Credence's anger bubbles over, and he is revealed to be a massive, powerful Obscurial. Ha ha ha. Checkmate, Mr. Graves. Obscurial Credence flies around the city, destroying buildings left and right, which is a fair reaction, and he eventually dives into the subway to hide. Newt follows Credence into the subway to try and calm him down. He uses similar skills and affection that we've seen him use with his animals. We, as the audience, can tell that it's working because the black blob effect of the Obscurial begins to get smaller and smaller and less sporadic. The camera also begins to slowly zoom in on the Obscurial in a way similar that you would slowly and gently approach an animal that you've never met before. Unfortunately, we can't have nice things, and Mr. Greaves runs into the subway and immediately angers Obscurial Credence. Why? This brings our friends from the magical government into the subway party where they quickly kill Credence. The killing of Credence ends Act 2 of Fantastic Beasts and brings along Act 3, The Resolution. The Resolution starts with a small piece of Obscurial Credence, who, if you don't remember, was just destroyed by magical government. That small piece floats out of the subway through a grate and into the world. This foreshadows that he may have not actually died and is actually somewhere out in the world, living his life as an Obscurial, now knowing he's a wizard. That's fun. We then see Graves reveal himself as actually being Grindelwald, who is a known wizard Nazi. Not cool. All of the government people in the subway seem to agree that that's not cool and arrest him on the spot. Finally, we have Newt using his knowledge of creatures to erase the memories of the Obscurial from any non-magical person's memory. This ties up our main plot lines while also leaving a few questions open for the audience to be intrigued to see the next film. I think this movie followed the structure of a 3-act movie to a T. It was fast-paced and had a clear beginning, middle, and end. One thing that I didn't like very much about this film was the characterization and development of some of the characters. In my opinion, Tina and Newt seem to be the only ones with real characterization and character development throughout the whole movie. Newt's development was based on interpersonal relationships and becoming more confident around other people. Tina's arc showed her becoming more daring and willing to break rules and not be a blind follower when the rules are hurting the greater good. However, I do believe that Queenie and Jacob stayed pretty one-dimensional throughout the whole film. Queenie's main traits seem to be loving Jacob and Tina, and Jacob's main traits seem to be loving Queenie and not being a wizard. And I'm not saying these aren't good traits to have, it's just that's all they have. And it doesn't develop. Nothing really changes. And I mean, while them being in love is a beautiful, wonderful, fabulous story that I absolutely adore, I would have liked to see it fleshed out a bit more, so we could see more of the characters as people. However, this is a series. This is the first film in a 5-part series, so there's plenty of time for these characters to be fleshed out more, and I'm really hoping that they are. My ratings for this film go as so. For film style, I would rate Fantastic Beasts an 8 out of 10. I think it had some really cool and interesting shots, like the camera becoming the obscurial, but I would have liked to see some more of those cool, diverse shots. For elements of genre, I would give this film a 9 out of 10. I would classify this film as a historical fantasy adventure film. I think it stuck to the fast-paced nature and magical themes of this really well, along with the historical parts, but I would have liked to see a little bit more historically things, but that might just be me being a history nerd. Editing techniques, 10 out of 10! It looked really cool. I have nothing to say. I don't know much about editing. I thought it looked really nice and cool. Music and sound editing, I give an 8 out of 10. I really liked the music. I thought it conveyed the tones pretty well throughout the entire movie. I also liked how the opening title sequence started with a song that was similar to Hedwig's theme, which is the probably most main recognizable tune from the Harry Potter movies. I like that because it signals to the audience like a familiar feeling, a familiar sound, so that you know you're going back into this world, but it is slightly different so that you know it's not going to be the same. We're going to see this world from a new, different light and different perspective, and I like that. I think it's really cool. I did put it at an 8, however, because I was kind of hoping that the magical creatures would have more magical sounds and more magical music around them and magical effects and tones rather than just a bird chirping. I don't know, just me. I thought it was cool though. For the script, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 because, as I said earlier, I would have liked some of the characters to be fleshed out more. I also found some of the second Salem scenes kind of confusing and like odd and just like I didn't really understand completely where they were coming from, but I don't know, that might just be me. Actors' performance, I give a 10 out of 10. I thought they all had really unique and distinct physical character choices, and you could really tell what they were thinking and get that tone that you could from a book, from their physical stance, which I really liked, and I thought it looked really nice and it worked really well. So that is my review of Fantastic Beasts and where to find them.